So welcome to Jumbo IS and welcome to lecture number 10 from Miscellaneous in this lecture series called Prelims Powerplay 2026. As you all know, this is the last lecture from Miscellaneous category and this is the last lecture of phase 1. We have 2 more phases to go. Through this lecture series, through Prelims Powerplay, we will cover not only all the current affairs subject-wise, we will also cover the associated static topics as well, so that everything gets covered, everything gets revised. So phase 1 is about to get over with today's lecture, and from phase 2 and phase 3 onwards, we will become even more aggressive because prelims is right around the corner. It is fast approaching. So we need to be aggressive with our revision. By the way, those who haven't joined us, those who haven't seen phase 1, well, now is the right time, the last time for you to join this lecture series, to continue with this lecture series. So you can still cover whatever was covered in phase 1 and join from phase 2. But after phase 2, well, you can't join this lecture series. It will be all over. So join now. To register for this lecture series, well, you just have to click on the links given below in the comment section. Okay, so you can join it and let's begin this revision. Don't delay, because if you'll delay revision till March or April, then it'll be too late. Okay, it'll be a lost battle. So begin now. All right, enough of the introduction. Let's straight away jump into the lecture. And our today's topic of discussion is G2, G7 and G20. Okay, you must have heard these terms in international relations. G2, G7 countries, G20 countries. India hosted a G20 summit in 2023, right? So these groupings of nations are of extreme importance for us. Plus, it becomes extremely important. Why? Because in 2025, well, G2 word was being played around with. So we will put special focus on G2, but we'll also cover G7, G20, what are their challenges, problems, and what are their internal workings. All right. So without further delay, let's straight away jump into the lecture. All right then. So miscellaneous 10, G2, G7, G20. So first, let's start with G2. G2 grouping is basically USA and China, these two countries. Though G2 grouping is not in existence, okay, there is no such thing as G2, but this idea is floated around, okay, that both these two superpowers should come together to regulate the entire world. Now, what is G2? Remember, it is just at the idea stage. It has not been formally created, but USA and especially Donald Trump is playing around, toying around with this idea of G2. So what would be G2 if it is formally formed? So G2 refers to the informal group of two concept involving USA and China as the leading powers coordinating on global issues. So currently USA and China are in, well, they have locked horns on every issue, okay? They are rivals. But the people who support G2 say that USA and China shouldn't be rivals, okay? They can come together and cooperate together for the betterment of the world. So if G2 is formed, the rivalry between USA and China would go away and both these countries would come together to solve global issues like trade, climate and security. Now, this idea of G2 was first given by an economist called C. Fred Burgestein, who coined G2 around 2005, proposing US-China coordination as the world's top economies for macroeconomic stability. Okay, he gave this idea that USA and China should cooperate economically so that the world remains stable economically. Okay. It gained traction post-2008 financial crisis because post-2008 financial crisis, US economy dwindled and Chinese economy status increased. Okay, so basically it was widely believed that China and USA are the two superpowers, economic superpowers, via stimulus coordination and Obama-Hu dialogue. So Obama and Hu Jintao, Chinese leader, well, their dialogue saw G2 within G20. So when G20 summits were happening, USA and China would meet together on the sidelines, basically making people speculate that G2 is very much alive. Okay. In November 2025, President Trump revived this idea. Then this idea slept dormant. But President Trump revived this idea because he was there for APEC summit. And he, on the sidelines of APEC summit, Asia Pacific summit, he met with Xi Jinping. And later through a press conference, he said that we had our G2 summit with Xi Jinping. So G2 currently doesn't exist formally, okay? But President Trump has basically showcased his enthusiasm for making this body. Clear? G2. Now, if G2 actually comes into being, if G2 is finally formed, then what will happen? The impact is important, okay? If G2 is formed, then the world will move away from America's monopoly to duopoly of USA and China. Okay? This would lead to strategic realignment. The G2 framing signals a shift in the world order by acknowledging China as a near equal to USA. Currently, rank 1 is USA, rank 2 is China. But if G2 is formed, then everyone would treat China as near equal to USA, near superpower to USA. Okay? Prioritizing US-China cooperation while sidelining other powers like EU, Russia, India, Japan. So America would wholeheartedly focus on China, sidelining its allies and other powers, major powers. Then, through this, China would have some economic leverage because now USA has to cooperate with China. So China can also take some or demand some concessions from USA. China's weaponization of rare earth exports reinforced its confidence in holding future bargaining advantages. China has near monopoly on rare earths, and rare earths are the new oil of 21st century. China's monopoly over this would give it some bargaining advantages, so it can demand a lot of things from USA. Okay? Then eroding security guarantees. This is very important. Currently, USA has given security guarantee to Taiwan and many other countries that if China invades you, we will come to your rescue. But if USA is already cooperating with China and China decides to invade Japan, USA won't come and rescue Japan because now USA is cooperating with China. Okay? And currently, this would also strain India-US relationship. Because the bedrock of India-USA relationship is that strategically, USA considers India to be a rival to China, a rising power rivaling China. Okay? So if USA wants to contain China, it needs India. Yes? But if USA is already acknowledging China, it won't side with India whenever there is a China-India conflict. This is a problem. It is bad news for India if G2 happens. Really bad news for India. Okay? Because that means China, Pakistan, already there is a gang of two in our neighborhood. And America would do nothing in this regard. So this is really bad news. But it is very difficult that G2 will ever happen. Why? Well, very simply put, there are certain roadblocks. First of all, America and China have various political and ideological differences. Capitalism, communism, and many other ideological differences, which would basically which would basically stop their leaders from coming too close. Then there is mutual distrust and rivalry. Okay, intelligence agencies of both these countries spy on each other. There is mutual distrust. Then there are structural geopolitical issues. For example, Taiwan. USA will protect Taiwan. Okay, South Korea. Then USA stand on South China Sea. USA stand on Indo-Pacific, and China stand on Indo-Pacific, are dramatically opposite. So this is the thing. And the biggest roadblock is China itself is not interested in this concept. China has rejected this concept of G2 multiple times. So China itself is not ready, which is good news for India and other rivals of China, local rivals of China like Taiwan, Japan, Southeast Asia, many others. Okay? Now, impact on India or implications for India. This is very important, these 2 points. G2 risks sidelining India in Indo-Pacific. If China and USA come together, then there is no great power that would help India in the Indo-Pacific. Weakening Quad, the grouping of 4 people, Quad, USA, Australia, India, Japan, that would weaken. US support as China counterweight strains bilateral ties amid tariffs. Already US and India do not share good economic ties because of tariffs. They would further weaken. It entrenches China in supply chains, hurting India's China plus one gains. Already USA is supporting China plus one strategy, that factories of the world, multinational companies of the world should leave China and set up their factories in India. This is China plus one strategy. USA would abandon it. India would lose economically. Challenges multi-alignment by forcing binary choices. Okay, duopoly is not good for India at all. Okay, so this is the idea of G2, which is far from being fulfilled, but nonetheless, the idea is still out there. And it is a dangerous idea for India geopolitically. Okay, so it is important for us to know about it. Detailed information is given in your notes. Do memorize that. Okay, now along with G2, let's cover G20. Okay, G20 is important for India. Why? Simply put, well, India hosted a mega grand summit in 2023. Okay, now what is G20? Let's talk about it. So G20 is the premier forum for international economic cooperation between developed and developing countries, emerging top developing countries like India, China. Now it has 19 countries plus European Union and African Union. African Union was added in 2023 during India's presidency. Okay. Now it represents 85% of the global GDP, 75% of the trade, 2/3 of the world population. Well, any group that has China and India will be a significant share of the world's population. Established in 1999 post-Asian financial crisis, it upgraded to leaders level summit in 2008 post-global financial crisis. Okay. Now members are these countries. Okay. Take a look at this. The members of G20. Key facts about G20. Now, the presidency rotates annually. Okay. It rotates between countries' members annually. Regional groups ensure balance. Now, there is this term that is thrown around during G20. Okay, in every G20 summit, that is Troika. Troika means, for example, well, in 2024, Brazil was the president. In 2023, India was the president. And in 2025, South Africa was the president. Okay, so every year, the current president, the previous president, and the next president, well, they three represent Troika. Okay, so remember this term. Now, the summits are on two tracks. Okay, the major purpose of G20 was economic cooperation. So, in G20 summits, finance ministers and governors of central banks like RBI, they meet. This is track one. These meetings happen. And then on other issues like development, energy, well, Sherpa level summits happen. Now, who are Sherpas? Sherpas are the representatives of every government. India will send its own expert. USA will send its own expert. Those are called Sherpas for other issues. For economics, finance ministers and central bank governors. Okay. Now, its aims and objectives focus on financial stability, sustainable growth, trade, all these things are mentioned. Now, some key summits of G20. G20 is important for you because of India's leadership in 2023. It was a landmark summit. So, some key summits of G20. In 2023, the summit was in India. The theme of the summit was One Earth, One Family, One Future. Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. Okay. Now, what were the results of this summit? Adopted New Delhi Declaration. African Union was given permanent membership. Remember I told you? IMEC, India, Middle East, Europe Economic Corridor, Global Biofuels Alliance, Lifestyle for Environment Mission. All these things were done during India's G20 presidency. The next was in Brazil, Building a Just World. In this presidency, Brazil's presidency, focus was put on global South cooperation. And the latest summit was Johannesburg. Its theme was Solidarity, Equality, Sustainability. Now, in this summit, focus was put on critical minerals. We all know about rare earths and critical minerals, how important critical they are. Then climate finance, debt relief, United Nations Security Council reforms, AI and critical minerals, two most important things in today's geopolitics. All of this was done. And South Africa was the first African host to host G20. So it is important from that perspective as well. Now, the 2026 summit would be in USA. Remember this. Okay. So in 2026, so in 2025, the Troika was Brazil, South Africa, USA. Remember this part. Okay. Now, as far as G20 is concerned, India's role in G20 and the challenges faced by G20 are given in your notes. Do give it a reading and memorize that. Okay. And now let's quickly shift our focus to next grouping, and that is G7. Okay. Now, G2 is the grouping of superpowers. G20 is the grouping of, well, developed and top developing economies. G7 is the grouping of developed countries, top developed countries, Canada, USA, Europe, like France, UK, these countries. Okay. Now, these are developed countries. So it is important because they have a lot of say in the world affairs. Okay. So G7 G7 is an informal intergovernmental forum of 7 advanced democracies. Remember, they should be democracies also. Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, UK, USA. Plus EU was given membership. Okay, so 7 plus EU. Now, it represents 40% of the global GDP, focusing on economic policy, security, global challenges. Okay. Formed in 1975 amid the global oil crisis, it was initially G6. Then Canada was added in 1976, making G7. Then later Russia was also added, making it G8. Then Russia was removed in 2014 because it invaded Ukrainian territory of Crimea. So it was removed and it became G7 again. Okay. Annual summits, rotating presidency, there are Sherpas, all these things. Remember, no grouping. G2 doesn't exist. G20 and G7 do not have formal secretariat, permanent secretariat. Okay. Now, this is all you need to know as far as G7 is concerned. Yes, as far as India's engagement with G7 is concerned, India is not a formal member of G7, but it participates in the summits of G7 almost regularly. India attends as regular outreach invitee of, well, G7 summits, voicing Global South on clean energy, terrorism, ethical AI. Benefits for India of G7. Well, G7 launched Partnership for Global Infrastructure and Investment, which was a rival to Belt and Road Initiative of China. India will benefit from this. It will help India take the support of developed countries against China and all these things. Okay. Plus, it aligns with India's multi-alignment goal. Okay. Multipolarity goal. Reforms push everything. And yes, G7 suffers from various challenges, and whether people talk about its relevance, also whether it's relevant or not. Well, all these things are given in your notes, so do check that out as well. And with that, we conclude today's session. So thank you so much for watching, everyone. And I'm sure it has added value to your preparation. I'm sure about it. But it will add more value if you're consistent and regular, you memorize the lecture from the notes, you ask your doubts timely, and you give the test timely. If you're doing all these things, well, you will definitely clear this year's prelims examination. On that note, on that positive note, I'll be taking your leave with the promise of seeing you again with phase 2 of Prelims Powerplay 2026. Thank you, everyone.